United we stand, divided we fall. A house divided cannot stand. These are some expressions used in our nation's history. It's a theme of unification, unity, that our country so loves, and that word, along with freedom, may be thrown around a lot in the commercials leading up to the election. But why unity? I had to think about it myself. Why is unity such an attractive quality? Whether it be nationally, in a religious organization, in our families, in our schools. Why unity? Well, unity comes with strength and protection. And with that strength and protections comes peace and serenity. And then with that peace and serenity comes joy. So we all want joy, we all want peace, so we want to be strengthened and protected, and therefore we want unity. But how do we get it? In our scriptures we find that the good news is that Jesus Christ is the example and the means for unity. In our second reading, Paul is addressing the Philippian church in Greece, and they were dealing with a struggle in unity, their church. And so Paul recognizes that without unity, there's no peace, there's no joy, and in fact, no salvation. And so Paul speaks to the need for unity, speaking and thinking the same thing, being of one mind and one heart, as it says in our second reading. But how does one achieve unity? And he says, through humbly regarding others as more important than yourselves. Humility is the key. And what's the example? It's Jesus Christ. Because he then goes on to add a hymn, the second part of our reading, which was based off of him in the 40s, literally the 40s. A hymn that shows Jesus Christ, one who is God, who was in the form of God, meaning he shared that divinity, lets go and takes the form of a slave instead. Slave, the utter example of servitude, of lack of self-control. He gives away, takes the form of a slave, becomes obedient until death for the sake of unity, for the sake of getting rid of division. He dies and abandons himself. So Paul is saying, look to the cross, look to Christ as the example of unity, where someone disregards themselves so that others can be lifted up, and that strength and peace and joy that comes from unity can be found. So what does that say for us today here in Collegeville in 2020? Well, we're given the example of Christ on the cross, and we're also given the opposite of sin, because sin leads to division, which Christ sought to destroy on the cross. And grasping at the form of God, think about it. Who were the first ones to try to grasp at God and so become sinful? It's Adam and Eve, right? They grasp at the fruit because the devil says, you can be like gods on your own. And so Adam and Eve went for the fruit because they didn't trust God. And so the grasp at divinity, they fell and led to sin and led to death. And I would say the grasp at divinity is to grasp at self-autonomy. It means to grasp at trying to be self-sufficient, trying to be in control of our own lives. Because there's another expression that our country had in its beginning days. It's on a flag. It said, "Don't tread on me." We're going to protect our freedom. We're going to protect our self-autonomy. But that protection of self-autonomy is dangerous because it leads to sin and self-sufficiency and even to denying God himself, and to protect ourselves so much that we disregard the other. We disregard the other. Whereas humility, when we take on the way of the cross, when we die to self, leads to the salvation not only of ourselves but to others. That's why Christ said, those who seek to save their lives will lose it, and those who seek to lose their lives will save themselves and others. Humility is the key to salvation. So, as you come before God's altar, ask for the grace for humility, and then when you go forth from this place, ask God, what's the way that you need to die to self? You'll regard others as more important than yourselves. There can be a whole list of many different things. In fact, one of those things could be the one right on your face, the mask, which has been a source of conflict. But maybe that could be even a reason to deny yourself and regard others as more important as yourselves. It's very hard, I agree with you, brothers and sisters, to deny oneself and to seek humility. But Christ didn't promise it was going to be easy. He just promised it was going to be worth it. So ask for the grace and receive the grace of humility in the gift of the Eucharist, because Christ emptied himself and gave himself out for you. Ask for the grace to deny yourself in the world so as to lift up others, and so achieve that unity that Christ sought on the cross. And with that unity, strength and peace and joy, so that we may all remain together in God's kingdom, saved, strengthened, and happy, joy-filled in the presence of Jesus Christ, who is our Lord forever and ever.